The ship left Cape Town headed for the Dutch port of Batavia in the East Indies. Down in the hold were chests filled with silver coins, all ready for trading goods to be brought back to Europe. The ship creaked and groaned in the wind, all normal noises for a sailing ship of its time. The ship was sailing east, being driven before the strong winds before it was to turn north and head for its destination. This night was dark, there was no moon, and visibility was very poor. The lookout, perched high in the rigging, could see little of consequence against the dark horizon, and the wind was gathering force as the night wore on. In the wee hours of the morning, the wind had become a gale and was tossing the ship around and forcing her further east than she was ever intended to go. What was that? A crashing of waves on rocks in the distance, or just the wild waves breaking? Minutes dragged by. The lookout strained his ears and eyes in an attempt to identify what was in front of the ship. All at once he gasped aloud, a look of fear frozen on his face. There, right in the path of the ship, was a line of huge forbidding cliffs, stretching off to both sides of the vessel, as far as he could see. He shouted a warning over the howling wind, "Beware! Cliffs ahead! Turn hard to port!" His warning was too late. The steersman desperately swung the ship's wheel, but the ship barely responded. The wind was too strong and the men on deck started to pray, as they sought to swing their ship north, away from those awful towering black cliffs. They all knew it was too late, and the cliffs came closer and closer. Suddenly there was a grinding, smashing sound as the hull was driven up onto a flat ledge of rocks. Men were thrown off their feet, some flung over the side and into the raging sea below. The mast came crashing down, killing several crewmen as they did so. The remaining crew may not have realized it at the time, but that flat ledge the ship had struck would be the salvation of many of their lives. The wind's fury drove the ship higher up onto the ledge, and the waves pounded on the side as she swung around. Screams from below deck indicated that the passengers were well aware of what had happened, and the focus of every soul on board was now to stay alive, until the light of dawn gave them a better view of their predicament. Dawn was slow in coming, but the storm gradually blew itself out. The ship was damaged beyond repair, her masts broken and her rigging a tangled mess, strewn across the deck and over the side. With morning, the survivors could see that they had been lucky indeed to strike the cliffs at this particular place. The ship, although ruined, was largely still intact, and there was a difficult, but possible route up to the top of the cliffs. Either side, as far as anyone could see, there was no other place that the ship would have survived the initial impact. If she had struck anywhere but here, she would now be at the bottom, and the crew and passengers all dead. Efforts began immediately to offload people and supplies, and haul what they could to the cliff top. How many of the estimated 200 people aboard that ill-fated ship had survived the night? This we do not know, because although they obviously reached the top of the cliffs, established a camp, brought up supplies from the ship and may have lived there for some months, after that, they vanished from history as if they never existed. There was no search launched for them from Batavia. After all, where would the searchers look? It would be about 200 years before anyone even discovered the wreck site, and longer still before anyone knew there had been a number of survivors. So what was the fate of these people, and others like them who had been shipwrecked on the rugged, barren coast of Western Australia? There have been many theories, but nobody knows for sure, and perhaps nobody ever will. This video explores what we think is the most likely scenario. The area the survivors had encountered was the territory of the Nonda people. These Aboriginal people would have become aware of the presence of the shipwreck survivors due to smoke from campfires. How quickly this would have occurred is unknown, but sooner or later, the two groups would almost certainly have crossed paths. The oral traditions of the Nonda tell of light-skinned people coming from the sea, and of interactions between the two groups. This is, in part, supported by the presence of European artifacts made of metal and glass that have been found at Aboriginal campsites. Silver coins that originated at the wreck site have been found many miles inland. Were they taken there by survivors, or by curious Aboriginal people?